Story 1. Anticipation. Waiting for a Christmas catalog to arrive in the mail. Waiting for a movie to arrive and not knowing how it will end. Waiting to see who is on the other end of the phone when it rings. Waiting all year for one chance to watch The Wizard of Oz or Rudolph on TV. Waiting for anything because it gives you an appreciation for when it arrives. Story 2. Browsing a video rental store on Friday night. The excitement of walking through those aisles, picking up cases, debating with friends about what to watch. Sometimes the movie you wanted was already rented out, so you would discover something totally unexpected. Netflix just is not the same. Story 3. Taking off on your bicycle with friends and being gone all day during the summer, with no one worrying about you. Story 4. Just the British greetings of morning, evening, how are you? Lovely morning today, isn't it? When I was growing up, this was common. Any stranger walking past would say hi. Today, I've stopped greeting random people. Not because I don't want to, but because half the time they completely ignore me. Maybe it's because I'm a brown man with a big beard, or maybe it's just how things are now. I wait until someone shows me a little friendliness. Then I give them an over-the-top affection and warmth and say morning or evening, how are you, with enthusiasm. I think my children will miss out on this. Sad times we live in. Story 5. Buying a physical device, unbox it, assemble it if necessary, plug it in, and use it right away. Now you have to subscribe to various services, pay here and there to unlock features, pay to avoid ads. Why is there a subscription to use features on my car, console, or television? Soon, you might have to subscribe to turn off the lights in your home. Story 6. Slamming the phone after a bad conversation because you are angry does not work for me. Story 7. Letters. Does anyone write letters anymore? I have hundreds that I recently started rereading from my life. It is all mapped out on paper. Story 8. I was raised with little parental attention and limited access to the internet from a young age, which has completely influenced the course of my life for the better. Unfortunately, the games, people, and the same internet I grew up with are no longer available. Story 9. The excitement of waiting for something is gone. Everything is immediate now. No more waiting for a movie, album, or book to be released. No more waiting a whole week or an entire summer for the next episode of a show. No more waiting for the internet to connect via phone line. No more being unreachable by phone and having to wait for a friend to get home to contact them. Now it is a generation that wants immediate satisfaction, and if they do not have it, they become upset. Story 10. The internet before it all condensed into a small number of giant websites. Back before corporate America learned how to squeeze every last bit of attention and money from it. Forums and blogs and well-maintained news sites. Google actually worked. Before everything was search engine optimization within an inch of its life. Before every site became a pile of ads and clickbait. Before the algorithm. Story 11. Being able to repair things is important. Nowadays, everything is so disposable, and access to parts or information is so restricted. It is sad. Story 12. Starry sky, we are approaching the level of light pollution where there will soon be no place left to see the natural night sky with all the stars because the nights are just too bright. We are likely years or months away from corporations using the sky as a giant advertisement board. Story 13. The vast and complex infrastructures that serve as pillars of modern society have been taken for granted for too long. Their value has been disregarded. Lack of maintenance will trigger their collapse. Instead of drinking bubble teas and lattes with their college friends, future generations will be gathering prickly pears and herding emaciated goats in the wasteland. Or maybe I have just been watching too many dystopian movies. Story 14. All the trees where I am from, the mountains we used to drive around are bare. I cannot take a small motorboat out on the lake because wealthy people bought homes there that they only use once a year. There is a dock for a jet ski every 15 feet. I never see deer come to drink anymore, cranes fly around, or turtles resting on logs. These people bring large boats meant for the ocean onto the lake, making it impossible for small boats or kayaking. Story 15. Going to a movie rental shop on a Friday night looking for a game and a movie to enjoy over the weekend. It is a bonus if the game still has saved progress on the cartridge. Story 16. Playing with neighborhood children. With both parents working, children being in daycare, or families having fewer children, there are not many children playing in the neighborhood these days. Story 17. Monoculture and reduced level of political polarization. Everything is splintered into infinite specificity. There is not a shared cultural experience. You would have seen what was nominated for an Oscar that year, seen the same commercials, and heard some of the same records. There was a vocabulary to share, and I think the absence of the former is somewhat the cause of the latter. Story 18. I know that a lot can go wrong, and it is irresponsible from an adult perspective, but playing with other children on construction sites and in abandoned buildings unsupervised has taught me more about humanity and empathy than any play date where my parents were present. I just do not see children playing outside like that anymore. Story 19. So many good answers here. Mine sounds silly, but drive-in movies. My children love to pack up the car with blankets and other items. We would stop for food on the way, then park ourselves in our folding chairs. Good summer fun. Story 20. I volunteered at a museum on a military base. I regularly talked with the aviators who flew many of the aircraft there, and it was always a great experience to have that human connection. Most of the aviators were an absolute joy to have a conversation with. I often speak with newer aviators at the base, and I sometimes feel sad that they do not get to experience that connection now that the older aviators have passed on. Story 21. A free democratic society not governed by a corrupt administration that is complicit in the destruction of the United States. Story 22. Classic American muscle cars from the 1960s and 1970s are now strictly millionaire toys and investments. Story 23. Being very bored as a child, you lie in the grass and stare at things like blades of grass, bugs, and worms. Then you turn over and look at the clouds. After a while, you realize enough time has passed, and it's time for your favorite show. You race into the house as if it is the best thing you have ever done in your life. Story 24. Daydreaming. Wandering outside, talking with friends, watching music videos on music television, having little to no access to people's internal verbal overflow. Story 25. Living in a world without widespread surveillance was a specter raised during my childhood that we all believed to be far-fetched. However, in only a couple of decades, we not only accepted surveillance but changed to welcome it in our homes. It is as if we believed that big government was the only boogeyman and completely forgot about all the others. Story 26. Growing up and exploring the world as a teenager without your parents knowing your whereabouts is a necessary part of developing as an adult. Story 27. Going to the cinema to watch films. You still can, but films often stream immediately or a few weeks later. If children and parents know it is available for streaming, they just watch at home. Coins and notes. Counting these out to bag them up or buy a drink or snack. This will change if we go cashless. Seeing Concorde fly or flying in it. I once saw it but never flew in it. This started happening some years ago but is worth a mention. Story 28. Being able to breathe clean air, drink clean water directly from a stream, and hunt or gather food directly from the land you occupy is important. For instance, my state recently revised its recommendations for fish consumption. Due to toxins such as dioxin, mercury, and polychlorinated biphenyls, fish consumption is severely limited. Less than 8 servings per month are allowed. You read that right, per month. Drinking from any pond, lake, or stream is highly discouraged. Our wild game, wild fruits, vegetables, nuts, and berries are no better off. It is ironic how our agriculture, grown in the same environment, is considered clean when everything else is toxic. But that is politics. We have turned our water wonderland into a toxic wasteland. Even if we stop dumping all toxins today, which will never happen, it would take at least 100 years for the environment to clean itself up naturally. I bet if you look, your area is probably very similar or even worse. Story 29. Pre-COVID festivals and concerts. People and crowds have been different since then. Perhaps more shut-in is the best way to describe it. I cannot fully express it with words, but most people can feel the difference. Story 30. The pre-cell phone excitement of making plans to meet someone somewhere and both actually being there at the agreed-upon time. Story 31. Getting hurt outside was part of having fun with your friends. Now other parents want their kids in hamster balls and are quick to call Child Protective Services on you if you don't want the same. Story 32. Playing outside, I feel like I was the last generation to actually be outside playing. Now I see no one ever. I am only 20, but when I was at the farm for a memorial, all the kids were playing Man Tracker. You tag someone and they become it as well. They wanted me to play. That was so fun, even though I was out of shape. Story 33. I will be called a racist, but forget it. A place where my children can grow up without fear of extreme believers in any religion. A school where religion and politics are not a concern, since they are children. Also, a place where people can have an argument without resorting to violence. I hate the path we are taking. Story 34. Blowing on cartridges. The suspense just before playing a game on the PlayStation. Playing outside with a bunch of kids you do not know in the afternoon and having fun without worry. Watching good television. Learning by yourself instead of cramming information instantly. Waiting for a web page to load. Like, Story 35. For me, I always feel sad about the video rental stores, which were a fond childhood memory. I am positive that when I was younger, the streets had many kids playing around after school and on the weekends. I was likely to run into other kids riding around or at some dirt jumps pooling money together to get some hot chips. I used to be outside from around 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. in summer at times. Story 36. You cannot go into your backyard at night and see the stars anymore. Light pollution is harmful. Security provided by lighting is beneficial. However, not being able to see stars simply by looking up is unfortunate. Story 37. History preserved via letters. I think of a stack of letters that my dad found while cleaning out my grandparents' home. It was from a Civil War soldier to his significant other. I am not sure if they were married or not. I have also seen letters in museums. Text messages will not be preserved for future generations. Museums are not going to show screenshots of text messages from 100 years ago. Story 38. I am pretty young, still in high school, and I was taught good music at a young age. I know plenty of good songs, but the songs now are just terrible. People will not know what good music is since the new, bad music is out. Story 39. The feeling of not having a phone attached to your hip. Not knowing what life was like without that distraction. Story 40. The preciousness of finding pictures of cool people, bands, and things you liked. Now they practically make up the internet. Story 41. Not having a phone in your pocket. Just being 12 and enjoying life around you instead of relying on a liquid crystal display for entertainment. Story 42. Nobody knows the struggle of downloading from LimeWire. All the kids today have the luxury of ripping audio from YouTube. Story 43. Normalcy. There are too many influencers and foreign automated accounts spreading false information on both sides. Story 44. Most amazing television shows, movies, and video games of the past. Many titles are being removed. Netflix and other streaming applications do not have many old television shows and movies, and they are often labeled as currently unavailable. Nowadays, the only way to play retro games is by downloading their ROMs online, but such websites are being taken down. Additionally, censorship of media remains a significant issue. Story 45. Cassette, MP3 players, CD, vinyl, also known as no phone call, text message, or email during that awesome solo on that multi-platform device. Some functions are great when combined, like weather, text, and maps functions, but watching a movie or listening to music, as someone who grew up around 2000, some things are better enjoyed separately without being obliged to interact. Story 46. Civil discussions. The colorful world that existed before the Pixies from Fairly Odd Parents took over the market and made everything muted, flat, homogeneous, nickel and dimed, and ad-infested. Fireflies. Cars that make sounds when you rev them. I have been a car enthusiast since I was a little boy. The world that existed before politicians finally figured out the formula to split people in any country down the middle and get them to hate each other over arbitrary lines drawn in the sand, while we are programmed to turn a blind eye to the failings of our leaders. McCarthyism was perfected in 2016, and if politicians around the world have their way, which they are, we will be dragged kicking and screaming to a world where they ensure we never get along again. A world before widespread social media. Story 47. What was considered normal, which we took for granted because of local and global politics mostly. It worked in the background and, although far from perfect, was not a daily series of ominous news bulletins, governmental programs for health, safety, and social safety nets, regulations that made us safer and healthier in the short and long term, and enforcement of penalties on health and environmental laws. They will never know normal weather and storms, freedoms such as privacy and free speech, protections for health and safety, legal protections for average people, much more stability in employment and financial markets, a sense of community at all levels, help and empathy through social safety nets, most but not all being profit-oriented, and many other things that are slipping away at increasing rates. Story 48. Having nothing for their inner children. I was thinking about this recently as I was talking to a friend about games we played as children. I still have some of my collection of Barbies. My sister loved My Little Pony and still has some of her collection. What will future generations have? Even now, there are many children who do not play with anything like this, going straight to technology and fashion. Story 49. Childhood autonomy. If you are under 18, you cannot really do anything these days unsupervised, which is sad. We were everywhere and at the same time not in trouble. Story 50. I have seen northern white rhinoceroses at the San Diego Wild Animal Park. The park staff were doing their best to prevent them from going extinct. Story 51. Offline childhood. They will never know how peaceful life can be during development when nothing revolves around social media popularity. Sure, we had bullying, local popularity battles, and we went through waves of anorexia and other issues, but not on this worldwide scale. The world was small, and it did not feel like a war against billions of people. Story 52. Learning patience and deep relationships. Social media and mobile phones give you instant rewards, releasing dopamine. Many things are worth waiting for or making an effort. Social skills suffer because if something doesn't work out instantly, there seems to be a new option just around the corner. I don't relate to women who financially depended on their husbands and couldn't leave. I relate to the swiping mentality, the constant search because what you found is nice, but there could be something even better with seemingly endless possibilities. Somehow, this is shallow because with so many options, there is hardly any time to concentrate on one thing. Story 53. They had no idea how free it felt to leave the house. You would write a note saying you would be back at a certain time or not and go out. Then you came back whenever you came back. No texting, no phones, just gone for the day. Story 54. Going to Blockbuster or Hollywood Video on Fridays after school was exciting for my sister and me as kids. Even the Redbox machines were thrilling. We almost always ended up renting Ponyo or The Adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl because they were the only movies we could agree on, given our age difference of 5.5 years. Story 55. Being able to afford living on or very close to water. In the 1980s, I grew up 2 houses from the beachfront in Florida and had several friends who lived on the St. Johns River. All of the normal, modest homes where I spent my childhood running in and out as part of a wild group of kids on bikes have been torn down and replaced with multimillion-dollar mansions. There isn't a kid in sight. It makes me sad. I know I was lucky to grow up where I did, but we were poor. Only the wealthy are allowed to own the remaining pieces of paradise I grew up in. Story 56. Sexually active women can date multiple men without risking assault by aggressive men influenced by internet pornography. Story 57. Community, a sense of community around them, like being able to visit the neighbors and play in their garden with their children, being able to hop in a neighbor's car in the morning to go to school, neighborhood barbecues, running around the neighborhood with your friends until late, feeling quite safe because everyone knew each other and looked out for each other. Story 58. Playing silly, made-up games in the playground or going around people's houses. There were me, my brothers, and my godbrothers with games like trampoline wrestling, where my character was Angry Humphreys. Others included Rumble Richards, who was one of my brothers. Cushion Man, who always strapped a cushion around his head, was my other brother. Ted, with underwear on his head, was my godbrother, and Fisheye Flynn was my other godbrother's character. Future generations may miss out on the fun of role-playing and wrestling on the trampoline that my god family enjoyed. Story 59. It saddens me that future generations will not know a life that is not completely dominated by technology and monetization. I already feel, to some degree, that we are only living a simulation of life at the moment. Story 60. Salir a jugar fútbol, volver y por la noche jugar PlayStation 3 Black Ops 2. Lo recuerdo como si fuera ayer, hace más de 10 años. Story 61. Separation. My friends and I had little adventures around town by ourselves, and it was just ours. My middle-aged coworker was bragging about how she saw her son on Life 360 hanging out at a different school at night. She felt proud to tell me she kept trying to FaceTime him and was yelling at him over text to get his ass out of there. That is so sad. I do not know. Story 62. Time to do nothing and just be bored. It seems like the longer we live, the more we go working and getting entertained instead of taking time just to play around in our own mind and space. Story 63. Electricity, piped water, hot showers, regular food, airplanes, predictable seasons, democracy, art, bananas. Story 64. Ownership. We are moving further into rental and license agreements instead of full ownership of a product. Houses are very expensive now, and the upfront cost is difficult to obtain. Entertainment ownership, such as movies and media, is all digital now, so you technically borrow it from the distributor. Electronics and the average vehicle depreciate significantly upon purchase, so their value is mainly useful as an aid for other ventures. Today, precious metals are one of the few assets with real ownership value besides rental properties. Gold tends to gain value after years of ownership, while rentals appreciate more quickly, but the upfront cost is substantial. My generation, the millennials, experience less ownership, while the baby boomer generation and foreigners experience more. Generation Z sees even less ownership unless there is a change in regulations. Story 65. Getting new albums of your favorite bands, gathering and listening to them on our rack systems. We read the liner notes and admired the artwork on the covers, debated which stylists, receivers, tuners, amplifiers, and speakers were the best. It was a great time. Story 66. Video stores, honestly. Going every Friday to rent a few movies, get a pick and mix of candies or chocolates, and then go through McDonald's on the way home was epic. We are way too spoiled with Netflix now, which takes the pleasure out of movies. Story 67. When most art was not generated by artificial intelligence, the same applied to writing. There were people behind it because people had to create it. Story 68. Dodgeball, metal jungle gyms, no participation trophies, not inviting everyone to the party, learning to socialize in person, proper discipline, learning how things work, figuring out how things work. Story 69. The excitement of how new YouTube was. It was just a moderate, goofy site with all sorts of interesting, real videos. Now the vast majority of new videos are oversaturated, artificial intelligence-generated content. Story 70. The environment is deteriorating. Water and bees are very important for life. Unfortunately, many older government officials do not care about future generations because they believe they will not live to see the consequences. They have convinced some people that environmental issues are not real and that everything is fine. However, this is not true. Story 71. Proper childhood includes playing outside every day, renting movie tapes to watch, anxiously waiting for a movie to stream on a channel, quickly grabbing snacks during commercial breaks, and coming back from school for that 1 hour of internet to chat on Microsoft Network before your internet minutes ran out. We really had it good. Story 72. I grew up in the 1980s and 1990s. I have worked a lot with the younger generation. It is really sad all the things they missed out on, such as the popularity of music, television shows, and sitting around eating dinner with the family. I have worked with some really cool young people, and all they do is play on their phones. If you can get them off their phones, they are excellent conversationalists, but that is all they have known. Social media consumerism. They will probably never find their full potential even though they have it because nobody around them will help bring it out. There was a young kid whom I got really interested in music. He started playing the piano and absolutely loves it. I told him the importance of playing a musical instrument and how much enjoyment it could bring. I wish more kids would understand that there is more to life than a cell phone. Story 73. I do not feel sad for future generations at all. It is the older generations who are missing out. It has always been that way. One day we will all become old people, complaining about how the younger generations do not know what is good while they look back at us and wonder why we are so out of touch. Story 74. Already a reality. Children playing together in person, like in a neighborhood, and having fun without the need for technology. Story 75. Cable television. With streaming services, nobody has a sense of unity anymore. They won't be going to school to talk about, hey, Diary of a Wimpy Kid came on Cartoon Network tonight. Did you see it? Of course, I don't think they have movie nights on Cartoon Network anymore, but you get the idea. If one person saw it, almost everyone saw it, at least if it was on Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon. Story 76. Snow days. We are already seeing it now. With coronavirus, schools chose to eliminate snow days and conduct online classes instead, which, according to many, is almost useless as nobody pays attention. The joy of a snow day came from the ordinary schedule somehow shifting on a random Wednesday night to not having school on Thursday. It was exhilarating and a lot of fun. Now, they do not do it anymore. Story 77. This is more personal, but it saddens me that my younger cousins and family members never met my grandmother. My older cousins and I would tell the younger cousins about the things we used to do over summers and spring breaks, and all the things our grandmother used to do, take us to, or teach us how to do. Even though our family is close, it is sad they never experienced the bond a family matriarch can bring. Story 78. Close relationships between neighbors, spending time together outside, creating games, making memories. Story 79. A childhood without a computer. I think Generation X is the last generation to experience a childhood playing outside with friends rather than online with friends you have never met. Story 80. Classic Minecraft, just about every game on the Nintendo Wii. Fighting with sticks as if they were swords, watching Elsagate not to enjoy it, but to make fun of it. And now there are iPads and other devices and nobody cares anymore. Story 81. Shifting through the gears in a manual transmission on a twisty highway with many elevation changes. It does not require high speeds, just full manual control of the vehicle and situational awareness. Story 82. Taking turns playing video games to see who can beat the difficult level. Getting very excited as if you have won the lottery when someone finally succeeds. Story 83. Houses that feel more like homes than hotel rooms. Books. Excitement for real life. Being full of life. Curiosity. Monogamy. Story 84. Time with their elders. They do not seem to value parents, grandparents, or other relatives much anymore. Story 85. Actual fear of missing out. I remember being a kid and getting really excited when a movie would be at the theater. I knew that if I did not act right, I would miss the movie and have to wait a long time to see it. The same was true for many shows and cartoons. Another big childhood experience I will mention is having a time limit on activities. I remember waking up early for Saturday cartoons and then moving on with my day by noon. Now, kids often sit in front of a screen all day in some cases. Story 86. Getting home from school, grabbing a snack, and going right back outside to play with a rotating cast of kids I grew up with all evening. One would go inside at 5 for dinner and be back by 6. Another had soccer at 7 but would be back out by 8:30 for a bit. It seemed like a lifetime of endless summers playing road hockey, basketball, building ramps, burning stuff with magnifying glasses, sitting on the curb playing Pokemon Red and Blue, and duping starters to each other. Eventually, we stayed outside after the streetlights turned on, finding occasional trouble and stealing our dad's beers, to growing up drinking beers with our dads around bonfires together. Then, one by one, we all flew the nest. A new generation of kids moved in, our parents moved out, and for a few years I came back around to visit the last remaining families. So much had changed. The big hill at the park we used to toboggan down seemed a lot smaller than I remembered it. The big open sky above our houses where we flew kites and launched fireworks had filled in with a canopy of now mature trees we used to climb when we were small. Sometimes I stop and think about what the last night of us all hanging out would have been like. Did any of us know it would be the last time? I don't remember it because it wasn't special. It was just another Tuesday. I really have to give credit to the parents of that generation too. We all scraped knees and broke bones, probably got into more fistfights with each other over silly things, only to be friends again by nightfall. The police woke our parents up more than once during the jackass era of entertainment. Yet our parents never stopped us from being kids, the good, bad, and ugly of it. I don't have kids but work with them. While similar upbringings still exist, there is a degree of dilution to the childhood experience with portable screens, helicopter parenting, and a certain post-COVID cerebral awareness and aversion to danger and conflict that I think we were all just too blissfully ignorant to in the 90s. To me, that makes being a kid seem a lot harder now than it was. Story 87. Drinking water from hose pipes and eating chips of lead paint. It's awful that children these days are not neglected or put in danger like in past generations. This behavior needs to be glorified and glamorized more. Nostalgia for the sake of nostalgia. Damn it. Story 88. Life without constant access to the internet. I am just 20, so I was born in the internet era, but we did not have a computer at home until I was 8, and I did not get a smartphone until I was 14. Before that, I had to wait until I got home if I wanted to look something up. I did not have social media either. Story 89. Watching news on the television or listening to news on the radio. At least where I am from, almost everyone is getting their news from Facebook and TikTok. Story 90. Nature. Organic relationships. Fighting a bully then becoming best friends. Clubhouses. Adult magazines in the woods. Dinner with the family, no phones, no television. Inaccessibility. If you could not call at the right time, you did not reach anyone. People minding their own business. Actual music. Trans fats will kill you, but they actually made food delicious. Dressing like a responsible adult to fly. Human decency and principles. Story 91. Large old trees in the suburbs cannot adapt to the rapidly changing climate. Almost all the old trees have disappeared in the last few years due to uncommon winds. Story 92. One thing I notice in myself after having lived before the internet transition is the inability to tolerate boredom. Kids today will miss out on entertaining themselves, which can bring them peace. As a kid, if I was stuck waiting while my parents talked with other adults, I could daydream a silly story for a while, well, to a point. I would get fidgety eventually. Now, if I am waiting in line at the grocery store or doctor's office, I start experiencing withdrawal from outside stimulation after 10 minutes. What will happen if we lose technology? Yes, survival will be hard, but there is a certain kind of stress from boredom that is hard to explain unless you have been stuck at a sleepover. Everyone goes to sleep at 10 p.m. in a silent, pitch-black room. You have had too much caffeine, so you will not sleep until 4 a.m., and you cannot move much since you are sharing a bed with 2 or 3 other kids. This scenario still haunts me from childhood. Story 93. The feeling of growing up in a world before everything was optimized, tracked, and filtered through an algorithm. When boredom led to creativity instead of endlessly scrolling. When childhood meant mystery, not surveillance. Future generations may never know what it is like to live unrecorded. Story 94. Renting an apartment with your friends and living as young adults offers many learning opportunities. You learn how to create a home you are proud of, manage bills, build reliable friendships, enjoy privacy, have the freedom to go out at night, and truly discover your identity. Many young people today will never have that chance. Affordable housing is out of reach, third places are not what they used to be, and even good jobs do not pay enough relative to living costs. Everyone is getting shortchanged, and the youth may never realize what they are missing. Story 95. It saddens me that future generations of many species will miss out on life because of the actions of human beings. Story 96. Not having advanced technology. Having to go outside to find your friends rather than setting it up or hanging out online. Story 97. The time before social media. I was born right after the personal computer boom, and everyone had a computer at home. We had social media, but everything was pretty basic, like forums and blogs. YouTube was still in its infancy and was kind of like MySpace, where you could customize your channel and people could comment on your page. Also, social media was not exactly only my opinion matters, and I'm going to debate and chastise you for your views. The internet was not a big echo chamber for certain groups of hateful people. If you had an outlook that was negative or hurtful, you would keep it to yourself for fear of public retaliation. Now, those people can go online and find hundreds of groups with like-minded individuals who spend all day being just as hateful as them. They exist in this bubble where everyone is telling them that they are right and the world is wrong. So they continue to dig deeper into the hate, and I feel like so much more is negative. It is why the only social media I partake in is Reddit every once in a while. I honestly miss that time. Even if you had a phone, the text-based internet was basic, and you did more with your friends or your time. Story 98. Pokemon. Ghost-type Pokemon. Generation 7 anime. Generation 7 ghost Pokemon. Story 99. The thrill of felling an enemy in single combat with nothing but your shield, sword, and the blood rush of battle to sharpen your senses and make you feel alive. I am worried that the next generation will not really experience that. Story 100. Not being connected or available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There is really something to be said for being able to disappear for a couple of days. Story 101. Movies. Not going to the theater, but just movies in general. I have 7 nieces and nephews, and it is impossible to get them to pay attention. When they do, they look at movies from the 1980s like people my age looked at movies from the 1940s. But even with modern movies, they spend their time staring at their phones. I think about classics like The Thing, Halloween, The Breakfast Club, Dracula, The Maltese Falcon, and it makes me genuinely sad they will never experience them the way I did. Story 102. Just being able to grow up as a kid. Everything was so structured and controlled. As a kid, I would leave the house in the morning, come back around noon for lunch, then go back out until dinner. We rode our bikes around the neighborhood, played games, swam at different people's houses, climbed trees, and had unplanned and unsupervised play. Now it is play dates, soccer private training, agility training for soccer, actual team soccer practice, and so on. Kids are prepared for going to college at younger and younger ages every year. Story 103. Our national parks, our public lands, and all of the animals, fish, birds, reptiles, trees, grasses, flowers, fields, rivers, lakes, and mountains. Story 104. Genuine subcultures instead of weekly fill-in-the-blank core trends. Styles have been reduced to momentary Pinterest trends, and it saddens me deeply. Story 105. Seeing Pink Floyd in concert. Really, any older artist or band that has become part of the cultural fabric. Led Zeppelin, Lynyrd Skynyrd, David Bowie. The list is endless. I can actually get emotional thinking about how many people I love will never get to experience Pink Floyd in concert with the original lineup. It was such a magical, ethereal experience that I want to share it with all my loved ones. Story 106. As someone born in 1999, I had the chance to grow up analog without all the screens and technology. Memorizing house phone numbers, coming back home when the streetlights were on, just walking over to friends' houses to see if they wanted to play, borrowing library books, begging for a flip phone at age 13, watching cable television when it came on, and running to the bathroom during commercials. The generation after me will not have the chance to grow up unplugged. Studies are already showing negative impacts on concentration and focus with the new style of children's shows compared to those from the 1990s and early 2000s. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.